In this video, we'll learn how to name and classify different types of triangles. Here I have a picture of when I typed into Google Images funny triangles. That's the first thing that came up. So I hope you enjoyed it. Now, you can classify triangles two ways, either by their angles or their sides. And there's three ways to classify them in each category. So first, let's talk about classifying by angles. The first type of triangle, when you classify them by angles, is a right triangle. And that's a triangle with exactly one right angle. So, it makes a lot of sense having the name right triangle. If it's not a triangle, or if there's not exactly one 90-degree angle, then it is not a right triangle. The next type is a cute triangle. And it's not a triangle that is cute, but a triangle that has three angles which are all acute. So, if you look on the left side, all three of those triangles fall under that definition. On the right, the first one is not a right triangle, or it's not an acute triangle because it is a right triangle. And the next one has an obtuse angle, so that's also not a right triangle. An obtuse angle, well, that is a triangle with exactly one obtuse angle. So, on the left you see two examples of that, and on the right you see two non-examples of obtuse angles. So right now, I want you to think to yourself, and possibly pause the video so I don't give away the answer, of why you can't have a triangle with more than one obtuse angle. Well, the reason is, we didn't really learn this yet, but you probably know that a triangle, the sum of the interior angles, add up to 180 degrees. So if you have two angles that are obtuse, meaning they're greater than 90, then those two angles will add up to more than 180. So you won't have enough degrees for the third angle. So, something to think about. Now, the second way to classify triangles are by their sides. So, the first type of triangle we'll call a scalene triangle. And that's a triangle with no congruent sides. So it's a triangle that has three sides that are all different lengths. So they could be right scalene, obtuse scalene, or right acute. I forget which one I missed, but you can classify them by their angles or sides. So you can have an acute scalene triangle, but you can't have an obtuse acute triangle because those two definitions would conflict. But if you look on the right, the first triangle is equilateral, so all the sides are the same, so it's not scalene. The middle one is a right triangle, so it's not scalene. But being right does not make it not scalene. It's the fact that it's isosceles and has two sides that are equal that makes it not a scalene triangle. And the third figure over there is just a pentagon. The next way to classify a triangle by its size is saying equilateral. And that should be a lot easier to remember than scalene because it's right in the word. Equilateral. And you can see the word equal right in the beginning part. And the second part, if you take Greek, you should know that lateral means sides. And if you don't take Greek, or Latin, well, if you take Greek too, I'm sure you don't take that, but Latin works too. If you take Latin, you know that lateral means sides. And also, lateral movement, if you play sports, is usually a movement from side to side. So that's another way to remember that equilateral means equal sides. And it's a triangle with three congruent sides. So all the sides are equal. So if you look on the left, two examples right there, they can either tell you what the sides equal or mark off the sides appropriately. And on the right, you see three non-examples. The first one would be from left to right is isosceles. The next one doesn't give us enough information to conclude whether it's acute or obtuse or right or scalene. And the last one is not a triangle. And then the last type of triangle that we'll learn about, the way to classify it by their sides, is an isosceles triangle. And that's a triangle with at least two congruent sides. So, you can have isosceles triangles, which are equilateral triangles, but not all isosceles triangles are equilateral triangles. So if a triangle is equilateral, it's isosceles. But if it's isosceles, it could be equilateral if that third side is congruent to the other two sides, but it may not be. So keep that in mind. Sort of like a square is a rectangle, but a rectangle might not be a square. Similarly. So the isosceles triangle has at least two congruent sides. And you see all the examples and non-examples right there. Now, an isosceles triangle is the only triangle that has special names for its different parts. So if you look on the picture on the lower right-hand corner of the screen, the first vocab word is the vertex angle. And that is the side, or sorry, the angle opposite of the base. Well, what's the base? That is the side opposite the vertex angle. Well, the base is really just, if you don't know what a vertex angle is, it's just the side that is not congruent to the other two sides. So if it's equilateral, you can pick any of the sides to be your base. So that's one way to define it. Another way is just to say what's here, that a vertex angle is the angle between the sides with equal lengths. So the last vocab word are base angles, and those are the two angles opposite the two sides of equal length. So in an isosceles triangle, you have at least two sides that are equal, and the angles opposite those sides are the base angles. And it makes sense because they're always going to be along the base of the triangle. Alright, that's the end of the video. Hope you learned some good stuff, and have a good one.